This is not a video that I want to do. This is the video that I have really been delaying putting together for many reasons. I think number one, we're still going through the grief and the loss and processing and healing. So it's hard to, sit down and talk about it. This also is a topic that really doesn't have a blueprint. There is no right or wrong way to experience grief and loss. There are so many different situations to consider. So by no means is this video going to be inclusive of all of the different scenarios and perspectives, but what I hope that it does accomplish for you all is just, I guess I hope that if you are a foster parent or considering becoming a foster parent, that it gives you hope that this is normal, that you can get through the grief and loss if you experience it. For others, I hope that it maybe just gives you a little bit of insight into, what other people are going to be going through as a foster caregiver. And I do want to specify that I'm going to primarily be talking about grief and loss as it pertains to foster caregivers, because that's the role that I have. I can't speak to grief and loss as it pertains to the primary, the birth families, as well as the kids in care. And even with foster parents, foster caregivers, I'll be using those terms interchangeably because it's actually shifting from foster parent more to foster caregiver. And I do think that's kind of a more appropriate title because you are giving care. It's a temporary situation. Even within the foster caregiver role, there are so many different scenarios when children are placed with you and then they're removed from your home. This could include, number one being reunification. When children come into your care, most often the goal is going to be reunification with the primary family until that's no longer an option. And so hopefully the case plan and everyone involved is really working towards reunification for that family. And so when the children are reunified, hopefully that is a smooth, slow transitional process. It's a healthy transition. The primary family is getting the support that they need. But in that scenario, which I would, consider an ideal scenario, there's a lot of time that goes into that transition, which allows all parties to really prepare for it. There's also going to be more resources and more support because it's a slower process. And as a foster caregiver, it's much easier to cope with that feeling of loss, that child leaving, because there is such a positive, other side to it, that the family is coming together. And as a foster caregiver, it's much easier to deal with those feelings and emotions with the loss of a child, a child who's been in your care, who you've grown, potentially really close with, for them to, move on and out of your home. When there's something positive on the other side that you can focus on, that really helps. So really focusing on the happiness and the reunification of that family can really help with those feelings of loss. Not that it's going to eliminate that feeling. We have been there. We still feel, the loss of, children who have stayed with us and who have then moved on. But I will say we've been fortunate enough to maintain some of those relationships. And so it really isn't truly a goodbye or a loss. But that's not going to be the case for everyone, because even if reunification occurs, that primary family may not want those lines of communication to remain open. And so as a foster caregiver, you really have to respect that, respect the boundaries that the family is putting into place, and maybe even the child. The child we've talked about in previous interviews with different people that, the children might want to really just move on, not have those memories of the time that they were in care. Even if they were positive memories, you just never want to impose and expect to have those lines of communication remain open. But yeah, so with reunification, there are still going to be feelings of grief and loss. Really any change is going to trigger this. The children in your care might also leave your home, with reunification and going back to their primary family, but you might not agree that that is the best for them or for the family at that time. And I think then your grief and loss can be a little bit stronger, again, because I feel like you don't have as much of that positive spin to focus on. You know, you really can't focus on, you know, oh, we're so happy for the family, when you feel like there could be, you know, more support or more time needed for them to have a successful reunification. This also could be the case when the children are moving out of your home because they're moving in with kinship. And this can definitely happen because when children are placed into foster care, it's the goal of the county to really identify if there are family members or close friends who can take in the children. This will create a healthier experience for the children because there's less trauma, there's less change, there's a familiar face and a familiar relationship. There are also situations where the children are going to move into another foster home for a multitude of reasons, whether the foster family has placed a 30-day notice or a notice for removal because, you know, for whatever reason that placement is not working out and the family can't best support the children, or the county could make the decision to move the children. And of course, this brings its own, you know, unique grief and loss emotion. Not to mention adoption or children aging out of the foster care system. Those are all possible outcomes when kids are placed with you. And so basically what I'm trying to explain is that there are many different situations where a foster caregiver is going to experience grief and loss, and it's going to look different for every person, every situation. So hopefully this kind of just gives a broad overview of what things to, you know, just pay attention to, and maybe even some techniques in trying to get past all of that. And to complicate things even more, foster caregivers tend to carry the emotional baggage of others as well. So it's very easy to empathize with the primary family or, you know, with the children and really start to have that secondary trauma because you're acknowledging and understanding really what they're going through as well as your own experience. I'm really hoping the mic is not picking up the fact that the guinea pigs are chewing on their home. I have Crosley who's trying to chase a fly. Anytime I try to get a video recorded, something ends up happening. And I found a couple of resources that I printed out, and I would really encourage any of you who have solid resources, relevant and, you know, within the last few years, share that in the comments and I will go through and add them to the description, because what I found is that a lot of the resources and training on topics in foster care in general are pretty outdated, and they're all over the place because every state is different, every county in some situations they're different. Everybody kind of has their own way of doing things. So trying to compile a bunch of different resources in order to give one big clear picture is a little difficult, but definitely comment below if there are resources that you have found to help with this particular topic. But this specific document shared that there are definitely some factors that influence foster parent grief. So the characteristic of the relationship that the foster caregiver has with the child. So the age of the child when they're placed with you, it's going to be different when you are caring for a baby versus a school-age child versus a teenager. There's just a different relationship there. Also, of course, the length of time. There can be a stronger bond that is formed over a longer length of placement. You know, more experiences are shared, more conversations, more trust is built. And so typically with a longer term placement, there's going to be maybe a stronger bond. And they also mention emotional fit. So if it was a special match, ambivalence, or feelings of relief about the child leaving the family. So that's interesting. And I will say that with grief and loss, I think one thing that I was reading is that guilt is just a very strong emotion that goes along with grieving and that feeling of loss. It is okay to normalize a foster parent feeling relief after a placement leaves their home. And I'm not talking about any specific child in particular, like, let me be clear. But as a foster parent, and John and I have talked about this before, we're going into it with the expectation that this is temporary. It doesn't mean that the bond that we have and the love that we have for these kids is any different. But ultimately, we support the case plan, and most often that case plan is going to have reunification being the goal. So when you say yes to a placement, whether that is 1 child, 3 children, 5 children, whether they don't have any identified, behavioral challenges or, learning challenges, or if you have a child who's placed with you who has a lot of really heavy needs, you're allowed to feel relief at the end of the day, just for the simple sake of once that child leaves, you no longer have to schedule multiple caseworker visits and medical appointments and, visits with parents. There's a lot that goes into having a child placed with you. And so there's also this guilt as a foster caregiver when the child leaves, and you have this small sense of relief that you can kind of breathe for a moment. It has nothing to do with the child, let me be clear. It has nothing to do with the child. It's really just, in my opinion, a natural part of the process. It's the ebb and the flow of being a foster caregiver. When you don't have kids placed with you, it's kind of a little bit calmer. When children are placed with you, it kind of like ramps up a little bit. There's a lot of added stress and responsibilities. You can kind of reach a point where you're operating pretty smoothly, and then depending on the reason for the child leaving, things kind of ramp up at the end as well too. So having that relief, I just want to stress that we should allow this and we should talk about it more. And there are some small examples of this. So if you have a child placed with you who really needs some extra help with schoolwork, you're pouring yourself into, helping them and working with them and making sure that they're on their homework and that they're studying, and you're doing it out of a place of love, just like any parent would. But then that child leaves and you no longer have to do that, and you realize that you have extra time in your day and you're not as stressed because you're not worried about this, child, getting their homework in, and you feel that relief. And then immediately it'll follow up with guilt. Like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. So yeah, it's just kind of a common thing. And, another example, if you have teenagers, so you're sharing a TV and you're always having to, watch certain things that the kids want to watch, and you don't get your own time. Obviously multiple TVs could solve for this, but maybe you have a little bit of relief on that first night when the house is quiet and, you by yourself or with your partner can watch the show that you want to watch, because for so long you've been giving the child the space to make those choices. I hope that is clear. Again, this is why I have a hard time talking about these topics, because there's a lot of gray area and it's hard to talk about things. It's hard to talk about things that are hard. It just is. This same document also talks about the circumstances of the child's transition can also impact the way in which the foster caregiver grieves. So if it's well planned, if it's a cooperative transition from one home to the other home, that's gonna create a different situation than when it's abrupt and unexpected. And this is where my empathy for primary families really is strong, because with our recent situation, which, again, we're not going into a lot of detail right now, we were given notice. And we went through an emotional roller coaster. We were actually given notice twice. We went through the roller coaster, we thought we were in the clear, then we went through the roller coaster of emotions again. And even that was different than these primary families who very abruptly have their children taken from them. I understand it's really easy to jump to the conclusion that, well, there had to have been a reason why kids were removed. And honestly, that's not always the case. And even if somebody has made a mistake, that's still their child. And so it's very traumatic for that parent to be going through that, especially if it's very, very abrupt. And this is what really stood out to me in this particular document. It's called Disenfranchised Grief, and I'm gonna read this. This is a grief that people feel when they experience a loss that is not or cannot be publicly validated and openly mourned. And I feel like the grief and loss that foster caregivers experience falls into this disenfranchised grief, because it's hard for your agency or for the primary parents, for your community to understand the grief and the loss that you might be experiencing and the mixed emotions that you're going to be experiencing. And in this, it says that this can lead to feelings of powerlessness, and anger and guilt are often intensified. So it's basically like your emotions are kind of bottled up and in a pressure cooker, and you can't really release any of it. And all of a sudden it'll burst. And for me, I can really relate to this. My best advice is to find your person. Find your person that you can speak with about how you're feeling, whether that's a partner or someone that you can truly trust. And I understand that on paper, the confidentiality and privacy of children in your care, all the details are to remain private. And I'm probably going to get roasted for this, for saying this, but I feel like this is where the policy is not, it doesn't actually reflect the practice. If you have a partner, like, you can let a lot of that out, but also they're really close to it too. So I have found, honestly, having conversations with professionals in the field, so, people at my agency, really trying to process and understand, that has been really supportive. Also, luckily, I'm a part of an organization that they really understand the work that's being done. And so while maintaining confidentiality and privacy, you can just explain kind of how you're feeling. Having those close people to you where it's okay to really process your emotions. And I do think that we should be normalizing therapy for foster caregivers. I honestly think that it should be something that is offered with agencies and counties. I know me personally, that would be an incredibly valuable resource. I think it's more important to give that emotional and mental support, that mental health support to foster caregivers so that they can best support the kids. So if there's anyone out there listening who is a part of an agency, really consider offering something like that, and maybe even make it a resource that's available, not mandatory, but just see how your foster caregivers respond to it, see if they use it. And then again, I'm just gonna highlight a few things in this document because I felt like it did a really great job of explaining these things, and I'll link it below so you guys can really read it and comprehend it if it's something that you want to have on hand. But as I mentioned before, experiencing grief, it's going to be different for every person. Sometimes what it looks like is difficulty concentrating, numbness, being very irritable, sleep disturbances, guilt and anger, anxiety, powerlessness, feeling overwhelmed, depression, apathy, loneliness, weepiness, and you can experience many of them. There were definitely times, especially in those first few days, if somebody asked me how I was doing, I would just break down and cry. I remember after Miss A left us and my mom came over for dinner, she just made a comment and said, I just realized that this is the first time that, she hasn't been here. And it was just an observation, just an acknowledgement of, how she missed her. I absolutely lost it. And again, I think for me, it's really important for me to surround ourselves and our family with the people that we can be the most vulnerable with while we're experiencing this grief and loss. It's a very private thing. And again, as a foster caregiver, you have to maintain that confidentiality and privacy. So if you go to a large gathering and people are asking you, how you're doing, most of the time you just kind of have to say, oh, things are fine. How are the kids? Oh, they're fine. You kind of have to put it at the surface level, and you can't really be vulnerable. But that's where, for me at least, I can be the most vulnerable with the people who are the closest to me, the ones who love and understand us, who know what we're going through, and who are going to reserve judgment on the emotions and the way that we're processing. And again, I don't want to just go through this document, but they do such an amazing job of really outlining all these different things to consider. So this document will talk about coping with the loss of a child in your care, specifically to the child that's leaving, for your own children or other children that will remain in the home, and then for yourself as well. So when kids are leaving your home, it's important to still focus on, having them be supported and to feel that love and that safety in your family. This specifically says give them permission to express their feelings. It's very important to validate those feelings. I think in a lot of situations, kids in care, their power has been stripped from them many, many times. And so finding ways to give them that power back is very important. So listen to them, allow them to express themselves and how they're feeling. Our parenting strategy is really to talk straight with them, tell them exactly, what's going on. Obviously, you're going to want to adapt this for the child who is placed with you, depending on their development and their ability to really understand what's happening. But this even says, let them know why they're leaving and where they're going. And hopefully your caseworker and the case team is going to support with that transition for the child. You can also make a life book or souvenir book. This is something that actually for our agency, we're required to keep all important documents. And, periodically what we like to do is just hand them over to the primary parent, as we can, as we see them. But if you've been with us for a while, you remember when Miss A left, we put together a beautiful book. She absolutely loved it, and I need to get ourselves a copy just because I love it so much. It's like a highlight of her time with us. And really focused on all the positive things. And for your own children or children remaining in the home, I think it's also important to do kind of the same things. Really focus on the positive experiences and talk straight with them, explain to them exactly what the situation is, as long as it's, safe for that child to know, and allow them to express their feelings and their emotions. Interestingly enough, I think that with Darcy, she's experienced this a few times, so she's kind of getting used to the idea that when kids stay with us, it's not really permanent, and that at some point they're going to leave, and we talk with her, she understands things, and we try to make that transition pretty smooth for her. So with this time, we didn't notice as much grieving that occurred with this most recent situation, and she even kind of made a comment one day that oh, now she gets to pick the movie, and so that's something that was age appropriate for her. She was focused on oh, now I don't have to decide what the other kids want to watch. I can pick the movie. And so you just validate that, yeah, now you get to choose, that's what's happening at this point. But yeah, so just give your kids the space to experience it and be there to support them. And then for yourself, so really just taking the time, and it's going to take a long time, short time, who knows. For me, honestly, it's taking a while to really process my feelings and emotions, and really getting past things and moving forward. Again, talking to someone about your feelings, we kind of mentioned that before. And it does say, remember your good times and your accomplishments. And I do want to say that I think all of you out there who have done such a great job supporting us and reminding us of all those positives that we have had, especially in our low times where we need it the most. It does say to draw your family closer and regroup. And I like that because it takes the guilt away from really focusing on the family that you still have in your home, regrouping and just kind of refocusing and not having to feel guilty about that. I really like how they included that here. So again, I'm gonna put this document, a link to it in the description of this video. Honestly, I feel like this is one of those topics that when someone is thinking about foster care, it's what scares them the most, is when you do have to say goodbye. And so I wanna make sure we're focusing on the fact that it's not always going to be this total, gut-wrenching grief and loss. There's a lot of positive that you can find when children are leaving your home. The grief and the loss are just going to be experienced in different ways. And a lot of times, if the system is working right and the relationships are being built between everyone on the care team, and your family and the primary family can build a relationship, it really isn't a goodbye. It's not a loss. You're really just growing your extended family. And I remember with Miss A's family specifically, when her family was, brought back together, that was their attitude, and they were talking about how they have this big support system, and that is something to celebrate. There's so much positive, even though there are going to be times where you're going to feel that really deep grief and loss. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.